Hey everyone, John Heath here again for MiltonRose Learning with another Let's Learn video on Shakespeare's tragedy Macbeth. So we're going to have a look at some of the basics just to start you off, and then we will look at some of the key areas of context for the play, which will really help you then unlock the upper bands of the mark scheme and get better grades. And then we'll finish up by meeting some of the key characters and what happens to them in this play. So first off then, if we have a look at the genre. Okay, so in terms of genre then, this is very much a Shakespearean tragedy. So it blends together elements of the supernatural with elements of a psychological thriller. So it's an extremely dramatic kind of play. And in doing so, Shakespeare kind of blends those elements together so he can explore elements of political ambition, because Macbeth really wants to be King of Scotland, but elements also of destiny and fate, which come from the Jacobean kind of religious context, which we'll get into in a minute, and also crippling guilt as well, which he feels as well as his wife, for committing the regicide of King Duncan, which we'll learn about in a minute. So in terms of a quick plot summary then, we very much have, he's a brave Scottish general called Macbeth, and he receives a prophecy from three witches that he will become King of Scotland. So that kind of sets him off. It's almost a dramatic catalyst for what happens after that. So he's spurred by this ambition, and he has a wife, Lady Macbeth, who's extremely manipulative and basically gets him to commit regicide or murder the king, whose name is Duncan, and he takes the throne for himself. That's the key dramatic action within the play. To continue this, Macbeth takes over the throne with his wife. However, they become consumed by guilt, and Macbeth descends into tyranny. He starts kind of murdering people around him to secure his throne, and eventually he's defeated by there's a Scottish warrior called Macduff. They have a big sword fight at the end, and Macduff slays Macbeth, and the natural order is restored. So he's very much a usurper who's took over the throne illegally. But by Macduff murdering Macbeth at the end, the natural order is restored to the Scottish throne and normal events resume. Okay, so that's just a very quick plot summary. Now, if we have a little look at the key context, now if we just zoom in, we've got three key points here. So first off then, just to say, that this is 1906, so we're talking the Jacobean era, and there's a couple of quick points to pull out here. So first off, they believed in the divine right of kings. Now what that means is basically that the king, whoever was on the throne, was God's representative on earth. Okay, it's a very, very profound point. So if you were the king, God had put you in that place, so therefore any attempt to usurp you or murder you is to actually not just murder the king, which is bad enough, but to go against God. Okay, and that was a profound thing, a massive, massive sin in this era because of the doctrine of the divine right of kings. That's very important to understand when King Duncan gets killed by Macbeth. Also, this was an extremely patriarchal society. Now, patriarchal is basically just means male-dominated society. So women were very much kept in their place, kept in the home, kept in the kitchen, and weren't really allowed to participate in political life. However, Shakespeare being Shakespeare, he always challenges those kind of social norms, and he challenges patriarchy primarily through Lady Macbeth, because she's a very powerful manipulative character, and she actually kind of circumvents and goes around the patriarchy to assert herself in her own way, although it does end up in tragic consequences, which it's very important to notice. Then moving on, the king at the time was King James I. Okay, so he was a new king of England, and he'd come down from Scotland to establish a new dynasty. And as a person, he was obsessed with loyalty. He was obsessed with witchcraft and treason. Okay, especially witchcraft. He even wrote a book called Demonology on witchcraft and how to spot a witch. So it's a very, very interesting kind of character in some ways. And Shakespeare kind of had to pander to the monarch, whoever was the monarch at the time, to get his plays put on and to get publicity and things like that. So hence why we have the supernatural element of the witches in the play. To be honest, it's to curry favour to a large degree with King James, because he was very interested in witchcraft, hence why the witches are there and really pushing forward the drama in this play. Then moving forward, as we said, just to build on that a little bit more, we have the supernatural. Now, there was a big belief in the supernatural within the Jacobean kind of era, and they believed that witches were widespread. They could be anywhere. They could be your next door neighbour, for instance, and they were seen as agents of the devil and chaos. So if you bump into a witch, you run the other direction. This was seen as an endemic issue, okay, and would create massive fear. And they took it extremely seriously. You could be executed for being accused of being a witch in this period. So this was extremely important to understand. When the witches come on stage in Macbeth, the audience would be terrified, okay? They wouldn't just be kind of laughing or anything like that. They saw them as agents of the devil and they would be extremely scared. That's very important to understand when you're analysing, especially if you get an extract with the three witches in it. Okay. Now then, moving on from context then, let's have a quick look and meet some of the key characters in this drama. Okay. So first off, Macbeth. Obviously the star of the show, if we can call him that. Now let's just get a feel for this character. So first off, he is initially a very brave soldier, very good. If a little bit brutal on the battlefield, but he has this tragic flaw of ambition. Okay, he wants to be the big man, so that tragic flaw of ambition kind of brings him down and ends up spiraling into tyranny and guilt. Okay, he's influenced by the prophecy of the three witches who say you're going to be king of Scotland, and he's also influenced by Lady Macbeth. He's very easily influenced. I think we can say that. And basically, he represents how unchecked ambition can destroy us. Okay, if we kind of are too ambitious and we follow everything just for that ambitious goal, then it can lead us into violence and horror and lead to our untimely death. And that's what Macbeth really symbolises. Okay, let's look at his wife, Lady Macbeth. So she's, again, in a patriarchal era though, she's very powerful as a woman and very manipulative, and she challenges those Jacobean gender roles. That's really important to understand. That would have been very strange for the Jacobean audience. She pushes Macbeth into murder. She manipulates him, basically. However, later on in the play, she does show her humanity up to a point, because she's eaten away by the guilt of what they've done by killing King Duncan. And she symbolises the inner torment and the cost of pursuing power. If you want to, be powerful, that's all well and good. But if you're going to do evil acts like killing the king and regicide and things like that to pursue that power, then that is not a good thing in anyone's books, and especially with the divine right of kings, which saw it as an absolute sin. Then moving on, we have poor King Duncan. So Duncan is the ruler at the start of the play, and he's a kind and generous ruler. Okay, and he values loyalty and honour. So he trusts Macbeth deeply. He comes to visit Macbeth in his castle, and he's murdered there. So his murder represents the betrayal of the divine right of kings. We should not have done this in the Jacobean era. It's bad enough murdering anybody, but murdering the king who was God's representative on earth is just an absolute no-no in the Jacobean audience's mind. So he symbolises rightful kingship, and also the chaos that can happen when regicide is committed. Regicide is the posh term for killing a monarch. So when that happens, all hell breaks loose in this play and chaos ensues. So moving on, we have the three witches, if we can treat them as a kind of unified character. They are mysterious, manipulative, they speak in riddles, nothing really makes much sense. It's very difficult to decipher half the time what they're trying to say. But they represent fate, political and theological evil, and the supernatural disruption of order. Okay, they are irredeemably evil characters, and the Jacobean audience, as we've learned, will be terrified of these, okay, when they're on stage. So they drive forward the plot by planting dangerous ideas into Macbeth's mind, saying, you're going to be king, and planting that kind of initial seed that plays on his tragic flaw of ambition. Okay. And then we have Malcolm. So Malcolm is the son of King Duncan, and he is the rightful heir. Okay, so basically, he becomes king at the end of the play. When Macbeth is killed, Malcolm takes over like he should have done, and so therefore he is a symbol of hope, restoration, and dynastic succession, the natural order being followed, and a new divine right of kings being kind of created in some way when the usurper Macbeth is killed. Then we have Banquo. So Banquo is a noble and loyal character, and he's what we would call a dramatic foil to Macbeth. So what we mean by that is a contrast. So whilst Macbeth is extremely ambitious and very, very kind of, he would do anything for power, especially when he's manipulated, Banquo is much more level-headed and he's the voice of reason. So there's a juxtaposition there, and we call that a dramatic foil. That's a nice term for your essays. He receives the prophecy as well with Macbeth. He's there when the three witches say it, but he doesn't act immorally. Okay, he acts actually in a very calm, measured manner. Okay, however, Macbeth turns on him eventually, and he does end up killing Banquo, who's his friend. But Banquo's ghost comes back to haunt Macbeth, and that's a symbol of guilt within the play. And then, last but not least, we have Macduff. So he's an honourable soldier, loyal to Scotland, and he has his family in all the murders of the play. His family is murdered by Macbeth because he sees Macduff as a threat. And this understandably, drives Macduff crazy. So he comes back to kill Macbeth. They end up in a massive sword fight at the end, and he ends up chopping Macbeth's head off and putting it on a spike, as you do. And he represents then justice, moral order, and leadership within the play. And he helps restore the natural order of Scotland. Okay then. So with that in mind, let's just have a little kind of summary at the end. So we've just had a very kind of quick look at some of the basics of Macbeth, then some of the key areas of context. You probably want to research those in a little bit more detail as well, and we'll develop those maybe in some more videos. And then we've had a quick meet of some of the key characters as well, and don't worry, we'll be doing some really good videos on those as well in more detail. Okay, so obviously just remains to say thanks for watching. Please feel free to hit the like, subscribe and the bell icon. It really helps us out. That'd be really great if you could do that. And then obviously look out for more great videos to come. So thanks for watching and take care.